Have you ever thought about like those times when, really insightful feedback could make a huge difference? Think about like a really critical presentation at work or a super complex project where you just wish you had like a better understanding of how you did and how you could improve.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all want to get better, right? And feedback is often the key to that.
Right. But now picture like taking that need for feedback and amplifying it by like 1,000 and putting it into the high stakes environment of a surgical operating room.
Yeah, totally different ball game there. The pressure is intense.
Totally. I mean, lives are literally on the line. Decisions have to be made like instantaneously. And then the question kind of becomes, how do you go beyond just knowing if the surgery was successful? Like, how do you really understand why and how to continuously improve? It can't just be about a simple yes or no, success or failure.
It's such a crucial question and one that, surgical world has been grappling with for a long time. We have systems in place to track how patients do after surgery, which is obviously crucial information. But often it's kind of like, seeing the final score of a baseball game. You know the outcome, but all that rich detail of how they got there, how that outcome was achieved, it's often kind of hidden.
Yeah, it's like knowing the score but not having a clue about the actual game itself.
Yeah.
And that lack of insight is what brings us to today's topic, something that you, our listener, brought to our attention, which is super cool. And it's this idea of surgical sabermetrics. And I know that might sound a bit technical, but at its core, it's really about taking these like data-driven principles that have totally revolutionized professional sports, especially baseball, and like figuring out how to apply them to the world of surgery.
That's a really great way to put it. Sabermetrics in baseball is all about using hard data, real numbers to understand these really intricate factors that contribute to winning and losing. So surgical sabermetrics, it aims to do the same thing, but for the OR. It wants to move beyond just those like top level metrics, like how long a patient stays in the hospital or if they end up back in the hospital, and really dig into the specifics of surgical performance itself.
So it's like we're going to be like those baseball statisticians today, right?
And yeah, we're going to look for the hidden patterns and insights.
Love it. Okay, so our deep dive today is really all about like exploring this potential.
Yeah.
How can this kind of detailed analysis, the kind that like reshaped how we understand baseball, offer a more insightful way to assess and then ultimately improve surgical performance? What are the limitations in how we currently evaluate surgeons and these surgical teams? And then where might this data-driven approach offer a more complete picture?
Well, I think a great place to start is by looking at the current gold standard, right? Which a lot of times involves something called surgical registries. They're incredibly valuable because they do collect this essential information, like we were talking about, patient length of stay in the hospital, readmission rates, things like that. But as those sources you shared point out, these registries, they only tell part of the story. They don't fully explain why some hospitals or surgeons might have better outcomes than others.
It's like just seeing the win-loss record, right?
Yeah.
But not knowing anything about like, a batter's on base percentage or a pitcher's ERA or even those clutch defensive plays that could have been like the turning point in the game. It's like we're missing a big chunk of the story.
Yeah, exactly. And those registries, they often don't have data on some really key elements. Think about like the actual technical skills of a surgeon, their precision when they're using instruments, how efficiently they move, how smooth their technique is. We often lack granular data on the specific approach a surgeon takes for a given operation too. And then, of course, there's the whole aspect of teamwork, which is huge in surgery.
It's such a team effort, right? You've got the surgeon, you've got residents who are still in training, kind of rotating in and out, which one of the sources actually compared to like a player coming up for the minor leagues. And then you have anesthesiologists, nurses, perfusionists, a whole team that has to work in sync. And evaluating the performance of this whole dynamic unit, it's incredibly challenging, especially with our current methods.
And what's so fascinating is that one of the sources actually drew a parallel to how the medical field has actually learned from other industries in the past, like aviation.
Oh yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, you know how the medical field has really adopted a lot of practices from aviation, like checklists and crew resource management principles. They did that by studying incidents and near misses that happened in the cockpit, to try and understand how to prevent errors.
Right, so they took those insights and applied them to healthcare, and it really made a difference in patient safety.
Exactly. And the thinking here is similar. Can we look at this data-driven revolution that's happening in sports and see if there are lessons we can apply to surgery as well?
I love that. It's like cross-pollinating ideas between different fields to find new solutions. Really smart. So to really understand this whole surgical sabermetrics thing, I think we need to break down what sabermetrics itself actually is. What is it about this approach that made it such a game changer in baseball analysis?
So, at its core, sabermetrics is all about the empirical analysis of baseball, right? So, it's basically using the tools of data science to go way beyond those traditional stats that everyone knows: home runs, strikeouts, RBIs, to actually get a deeper understanding of how individual players and entire teams really contribute to winning. It's about taking things that were once seen as more subjective and finding ways to quantify them.
So instead of just saying this player is a good hitter, sabermetrics would look at, I don't know, their on-base percentage plus slugging, right? All those advanced stats to get a more accurate picture of their overall value.
Exactly. And the sources you send over, they actually highlight two key advantages to this. First is that it's all based on real world data. So you're using data from actual games to evaluate performance. So it's not just someone's opinion or intuition, it's grounded in what's actually happening on the field. And then second, baseball teams actually use this detailed data to make more informed strategic decisions. So whether it's setting the batting lineup or deciding on defensive positioning, sabermetrics helps them make smarter choices.
So it's not just about analyzing past performance, it's about using that knowledge to make better decisions going forward. So basically, sabermetrics gives them a competitive edge, and it sounds like technology plays a really big role in all of this.
It's huge. The availability of affordable, high-quality video combined with increasingly powerful computer analytics has been a total game changer. They now use multi-dimensional high-speed video to analyze a pitcher's throwing mechanics in workshops. They can break down every tiny movement of their arm, their release point, even the rotation of the ball as it leaves their hand. And the source actually mentioned that this level of detail has led to some major improvements in performance: more strikeouts, lower earned run averages. It's amazing how such small adjustments can make a big impact on the field.
That is so cool. And I'm guessing this is where the connection to surgery starts to become really clear. I mean, that ability to really zoom in on performance, like you said, the surgeon's economy of motion, their precision with instruments, and how all of that connects to patient outcomes, it suddenly feels like it could be within reach if we use those same data-driven approaches.
Exactly. Imagine being able to analyze a surgeon's movements during an entire procedure with that same level of detail as they do for a pitcher's delivery in baseball. It would be incredible, right? Understanding how things like the complexity of a case, the time pressure, or even unexpected events impact individual surgeons and the whole surgical team, it could help us pinpoint areas for improvement like we never could before.
And one of the sources made a great point about how limited human observation really is. Like an experienced surgeon might be able to spot a big error, but those little tiny things, those minor inefficiencies in movement or positioning that can add up over a long and complex surgery, they're often just missed by the human eye.
Exactly. We just don't have the capacity to catch every little detail in real time. And that's where this whole idea of video-based surgical sabermetrics is so exciting. This potential to, and I love this phrase from one of your sources, to democratize quantified operative performance feedback. It's a powerful idea, right? Imagine if we can have almost like objective performance metrics, kind of like box scores for surgery for both technical and non-technical skills.
I love that. Box scores for surgery. It's a really cool way to
Yeah.
think about it. And it's not just about individual performance either, right? Because we were talking about how baseball organizations have used sabermetrics to analyze team performance too.
Absolutely. I mean, Major League Baseball has put a lot of resources into using data to try to reduce errors and make umpire calls more accurate.
Hmm.
Like using that Doppler radar technology to track the trajectory of every pitch and instantly see whether it crossed the plate in the strike zone or not.
Oh, right. That was huge in terms of making calls more objective and getting rid of some of that human bias that was always a part of the game. And one of the sources pointed out how, because of this, skills in data science and video analysis, they're becoming essential for everyone in baseball, from coaches to general managers. It's not just about gut feelings anymore. It's about making data-informed decisions at every level.
Right. And if you think about the stakes in surgery, the impact on patients' lives and the pressure on surgical teams, I think the need for objective, unbiased performance assessment becomes even more critical. Just like in those key moments in a baseball game, you need to know you're making the right call based on the best information available.
So surgical sabermetrics, it's more than just a trendy term. It's a real chance to significantly improve outcomes in surgery by combining the clinical data we already have with this added layer of detailed, video-based assessment of skills and team dynamics.
And what's really exciting is how analyzing recordings of both surgical training and actual procedures can give us so much deeper insight, which ultimately can lead to better training for surgeons and better results for patients. One of the sources gave a really interesting example from the field of laparoscopic bariatric surgery.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Well, they found that when experts reviewed videos of surgeons performing these procedures, their assessments of the surgeon's technical skills actually ended up predicting how well the patient would do after surgery. Like they could actually see things in the videos that correlated to patient outcomes. It's amazing.
It's really interesting. So the way a surgeon moves and performs those actions, it really can tell us something about how well the surgery is likely to go.
It seems that way. And the crazy thing is, AI could make this type of analysis even more powerful.
Okay, so let's talk about AI then. Because, yeah, that potential seems huge, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Using things like computer vision and machine learning, AI could actually be trained to identify different phases of a surgical procedure automatically. And that could then lead to some really incredible applications like real-time decision support systems that could transform surgical safety. Imagine, AI could flag critical moments during surgery and provide instant feedback or alerts to the team.
That would be incredible. Almost like having a digital coach right there in the operating room guiding the team.
Exactly. And one of the sources actually made a really strong case for how crucial team dynamics are to surgical success. It's not just about the individual surgeon's technical ability, it's about everyone working together effectively.
So AI could actually be used to analyze teamwork in the OR. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool. A lot of the factors that contribute to success in surgery are those non-technical skills we were talking about. Communication, being aware of what's going on around you, good teamwork, and making sound decisions under pressure. And the great thing is these sabermetric type capabilities are starting to emerge for team-based analysis in surgery as well.
Like those crowdsourced video platforms, right?
Yeah.
The ones that use these detailed skill taxonomies to assess how everyone in the OR is performing. The surgeons, the anesthesiologists, the nurses. It's a really holistic way to look at team performance.
Exactly. And these platforms are getting even more sophisticated because they're integrating AI to spot patterns and nuances in how teams interact that humans might miss. It's pretty incredible. And then there's this amazing thing called the operating room black box that was developed at the University of Toronto.
Oh, wow. Tell me about that. That sounds intense.
It is. It's basically this comprehensive system for capturing data during surgery. It continuously records everything that's happening, video, audio, the patient's vital signs, environmental data from the OR, even information from the medical devices being used. They did some pilot testing with it, and the results are pretty mind-blowing. Like, they found an average of 20 errors and 8 events, which are basically deviations from the planned procedure per surgery. And get this, they recorded an average of 138 auditory distractions per procedure.
That's a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
It really highlights how much is going on in the OR that we normally don't even think about measuring or quantifying.
Right. And maybe even more importantly, they found that there were cognitive distractions present in almost 2/3 of the surgeries they looked at. So all these factors are coming into play that can affect a surgeon's focus and decision making, and we're just starting to understand how to measure them.
That's incredibly insightful. And it really shows how these new approaches, like the OR black box, are allowing us to quantify all these human, technical, and systemic factors that we never really considered before. It's like we're finally getting a complete picture of what really contributes to successful surgery. But of course, with any new approach, there are going to be challenges to overcome. And one of the sources does a great job of outlining some of the hurdles that need to be addressed if we want to see widespread adoption of this surgical sabermetrics approach.
Yeah, there are definitely some big technical and cultural challenges that we need to figure out.
Definitely. And the source breaks them down into 4 key areas, which I thought was really helpful. The first one is implementing the tech needed for large-scale digital capture and review of both technical and non-technical skills. And this is so important because to train AI properly, we need enormous amounts of data. So we need to figure out how to record and manage all that video data from tons of different surgical centers.
Yeah, it's not a simple task. It's a huge undertaking to set up the infrastructure to do all that securely and reliably.
Absolutely.
Huh.
And then the second big challenge is figuring out how to learn from all that data once we have it. So we need to develop these structured frameworks for analyzing all those recordings and then figure out how to use them to improve decision-making in surgery and strengthen those critical non-technical skills. It's not enough to just have a ton of video. We need to know how to extract meaningful insights from it.
It's like having a library full of books but no way to read them, right?
Yeah,
We need to develop the tools and methods to unlock the knowledge that's in those recordings.
exactly. And then the third challenge is, AI is only as good as the data it's trained on, right? So we need to figure out how to create these unbiased AI-powered assessment metrics that are actually valid in different surgical situations. Making sure those algorithms are evaluating what's actually important and that they're doing it fairly across different surgical specialties and different types of surgeries.
That makes sense. You don't want to end up with an AI that's biased or that's only good at analyzing one specific type of surgery. It needs to be more generalizable.
Totally. And then last but definitely not least, there's this whole cultural aspect to consider. Like, we need to create this environment where everyone in the OR, surgeons and the whole team, are on board with using these digital recordings for quality improvement. And to do that, we need strong leadership that's supportive of this and real collaboration between all the different disciplines involved in surgery.
It's about creating a culture of trust and transparency, where people see these tools as helpful for learning and getting better, not as something that's going to be used to punish them if they make a mistake.
That makes so much sense. So it's a big cultural shift that's needed. It's about changing the way people think about data and feedback. But like we've been talking about, the potential payoff is huge, right? Improving patient care, making surgery safer, it's all worth striving for. And one of the sources brought up this interesting comparison to other industries where performance analysis is already really advanced, like aerospace and professional sports.
Yeah, and it makes sense to look at those industries. They've been doing this for a long time and they've gotten really good at it. Think about all the money that's invested in professional sports for scouting, for really in-depth player evaluations, and for coaching. And Sabermetrics has really allowed teams to tailor their player selection to specific game conditions and even make real-time adjustments during games based on all that data they're gathering.
And one of the sources pointed out this really interesting point about how using sabermetrics strategically, it can actually have this incredible ripple effect. Like, it can turn average players into star performers. And even struggling teams can become championship contenders. It's like they unlock this potential that was always there, but they never knew how to access it.
It's like finding the missing piece of the puzzle. All those insights from the data, it helps you see things in a completely new way.
Exactly. And it shows how powerful it can be to bring in these outside perspectives, these new ways of thinking. Instead of just trying to improve things incrementally within the existing system, you shake things up by bringing in ideas from a completely different field.
That's how real innovation happens. You're not afraid to step outside the box and look for solutions in unexpected places.
Love that. So basically, if we can learn from these other industries, we can start applying these same data-driven principles to surgery, right? And that's really what surgical sabermetrics is all about. It's about using those insights to improve surgical training, enhance teamwork, and ultimately deliver better care for patients.
And hopefully achieve those breakthroughs in surgery that we thought were impossible. Like, imagine if we could significantly reduce surgical complications or shorten recovery times for patients, all because we started analyzing performance in a completely different way. That's what we're aiming for.
And I think the most exciting part of this whole deep dive is that it really makes you think beyond just surgery, right? Like, what other fields could benefit from this kind of systematic, data-driven approach to analyzing performance? I mean, think about your own work or your hobbies. What are those box scores and those potential sabermetrics that could unlock a whole new level of understanding and help you get better? It's a really fascinating concept to consider.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. It's not just about surgery. It's about the power of data and analysis to improve any complex system, whether it's a baseball team or a surgical team or something else entirely. And it's about being open to new ideas and not being afraid to challenge the status quo, because who knows what incredible breakthroughs are waiting to be discovered if we just start looking at things from a fresh perspective.
Totally. I think that's a perfect place to end our deep dive today. Thanks for that amazing insight. It's been a truly thought-provoking conversation.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners, keep those questions coming. We love hearing your ideas and exploring those fascinating corners of the world together.
Yeah.
So until next time, keep those brains buzzing.